Awards, and recently this is new assistant manager of visitor experience at the Art Gallery of Ontario.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
And I'm just board of manager member.
My name is Carrie Ashfield. I'm the Director of Property Management at Atrium. I'm with colleagues now. We used to be the two of us. We were just been purchased. And I'm happy to be here.
Marnie Grona, Manager of Marketing, Communications and Corporate Partnerships at Sankofa.
I'm Taylor Wood. I'm the Manager of Operations at Sankofa.
We have some technical difficulties that we're just working through in the boardroom. Just one moment, please. Oh, they heard me.
All right. There we go. Should be really laggy, but could someone on Zoom give us an indication that they can hear us again? Yes, thumbs up. Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Great. Hi, Counselor.
Good morning, hello everybody.
We're just figuring out these technical issues, so we just did a little round of introductions, but
You're saying my connection is unstable. And so maybe it's just a computer.
okay, good. Well, if we cut off again, if somebody could put it in the chat of the Zoom so that we can see it, and we'll just try to proceed as best as possible. Great. Okay. Let's jump in.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Just introduce Diana.
Oh, yes. Hello. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Deanna Sankofa, and I am sitting here on behalf of my general manager.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we have a good agenda today. Are there any other items that want to be included in the agenda? Seeing nothing, then we'll move on to the quick conflict of interest check. I believe we all have our forms that we completed at the beginning of our tenure, but if you have any conflicts of interest, please flag them to staff immediately. Great. I'll just have very, very brief opening remarks to say that we're at a really interesting inflection point for the square. I think that we can maybe write the chapters of the history of the square in a couple different ways, but the moment that will stand out for me in the sort of transformation process that we're going through is the Sankofa Day celebrations, the launch of the new visual identity, and the gathering that we did with the consultants around the strategic plan, all sort of clumping around the end of summer, and you know, a really energizing and exciting moment for the square. The thing that is clear is that the kind of function and purpose, the new function and purpose of the square is coming into view. But it's also important to acknowledge that this is a radical transformation, that changing the name of a place that is a civic sort of asset can be contentious, that there are people who have thoughts and feelings about that. That the operationalization of that name change is significant. Brand new visual identity and all of the consultative process, thousands of interviews that went into coming to that visual identity. The actual process of getting new signs put up, and the red tape that the city has for us to navigate. That's just the very tip of the iceberg, because now what we're saying is we have a totally refreshed idea of how the square should work and what it should function as and what its financial model is. So I sort of take the occasion of those big events in the summer to say, you know, recognizing our desire, our collective desire to make those changes happen, recognizing the complexity of making them happen, and encouraging boldness, speed, iteration, but also patience, understanding, holding the complexity of the work in mind. This is a small agency that has operated in the same way for a very, very long time. It gets its marching orders from the city. It got the marching orders to march differently, and now it's figuring out how to do that, and we all need to figure out how to support that change as best as possible. And that's working with staff, working with management, working with fellow board members, working with community partners, working with our political allies in the councillor and his office. But change is complicated, and so thank you all for the effort so far. And let's not lose our momentum as we move into the winter. Maybe I could call on you, Julian, just to do our acknowledgements this time around.
Sure.
We do like a little roving acknowledgement sharing.
First, I'd like to acknowledge our Indigenous and First Nations friends and allies. As we gather in the heart of Takaronto, as this place was traditionally called, we acknowledge the original stewards of this land, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit. Takaronto is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island. We invite you to join us in honouring and celebrating their rich past, present, and future. And a sort of personal note on this land acknowledgement. In the last couple of years, we've started working very closely with the Downie Wenjack Foundation and have presented events on the square in partnership with them. And I say this quite emotionally. It's a real delight to work with that organisation. They are very caring, they're very supportive, and we are thoroughly enriched by those conversations with the staff and the broader community in and around the Downie Wenjack Foundation and all its partners and membership and allies. It's very significant to us, and we care about it. I'd also like to say, on behalf of the African ancestral acknowledgement, that as we gather on Sankofa Square, we acknowledge all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of African descent who came here involuntarily through the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. So please join us in honouring these ancestors and their spirit of resilience, learning from the past to build a better future together. And in a personal footnote to this acknowledgement, echoing what Board Chair Gideon has just said, it is quite a personal journey. I went to university in Edinburgh. I have lived on Dundas Street in Edinburgh in my student years, and my brother still lives nearby. So it's quite an arc in my career from my educational days being on Dundas Street in Edinburgh to undergoing this transformation and finding out much more about our African ancestors and how they came to be here in Canada. And I acknowledge that that is very difficult for many people, but we are moving forwards positively and onwards. And thank you.
Thanks, Julian. Great, so let's move through the procedural parts of the meeting here. We've got the confirmation of the meetings of the previous board meeting. So we're looking for, just one technical point. I'm trying to join in the Zoom. If somebody could let me in, SP Exec Team is my name. I just want to be able to see our screen a bit better. Great, thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve the Sankofa Square meeting minutes number 3, 2025. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Julian, any amendments?
No, I just wanted a point of order or clarity so that we should just document it, that whilst we kept the numbering of the meetings going through 1 through 7, board meetings 4 and 5 for various reasons were cancelled, so that there aren't meeting minutes for 4 and 5. So this is the last set of meetings when this board gathered. So that was just a point of clarity for everybody.
Great, thank you. Yes, and I meant to extend my thanks to everybody. I had a family issue at our last board meeting at the last minute, so couldn't make it. Didn't look like we would get quorum, so we rescheduled. But thank you for your patience on that. So, Councillor, you moved. Can I get a seconder? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Great.
So the minutes have been seconded by Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie. And all in favor? Thanks. Any opposed? Great. So moved. Over to you, Julian, our general manager's report.
Thank you. I'm just going to point out, bring attention to a couple of key things in the general manager's report. As mentioned, we've done significant work on the rebranding and signage. Still some more, a little bit more to go, but we'll be there soon. I just want to report we've done quite a major changeover in our accounting practices and our banking. Just to let you all know, we've closed our CIBC account. We've moved wholly over to Scotiabank. We've changed our credit card payment company and a whole lot of software associated with managing and tracking our financial records. So this is quite a big, has been quite a big change, quite an administrative change, but we are very nearly, there's some fine tuning. I know my colleagues on the management team would like some, we're testing out some different financial reports for them, different formats, but we're very close to that fully completed transfer. And we've also had this week our very first audit planning meeting with Dwayne Grant Thornton LLP in preparation for the audit of this year's figures. So that's all good. I'll report later on the city budget matter. We're delighted to welcome Faiz Bilal, of course, as manager of community safety. Faiz started just the other week, I think week 2. So we welcome him aboard. And for the board to note that there are during the course of the summer, 2 of the ex officio board members have switched out. Neither were able to make it today, but Scott Barrett from Corporate Real Estate and Management is replacing Irene Granuski. We thank Irene for her service. We will welcome Scott in due course at one of these meetings. And Adamo Donatucci, Vice President for Development at Toronto Parking Authority, has replaced Jeffrey D. So we also like to thank Jeffrey for his service. And Adamo and Scott will join us shortly. Tomorrow, the Civic Appointments Committee meet to shortlist for interview the potential applicants for the one civic board appointee place, that vacancy that is remaining. We don't expect Those interviews to take place until December, and sometime in January or February next year, council formally approves that new appointment. So that process is ongoing. And one other thing that I think the board should be aware of, there's been a long-standing legal insurance claim against the city and its insurers for a fall on the square during 2022 Ribfest. The claim, well, the incident was not reported at the time. A member of the public tripped and fell and has put a claim against the organisers Ribfest and ourselves. It is in the hands of a city-appointed lawyer. Papers have gone back and forth, and we will respond to questions and inquiries. But the way it works is that the City of Toronto insures us, basically, on the public and general liability piece, so that liability rests through the city's insurers to the city. But I'll report back if that case proceeds in any further shape or form.
Very good.
I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Julian on the general manager's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, financial statements. Julian, any high level
Yes, so
to point out?
the Q2 runs to the end of June, which is halfway of the year. It's really only a month, what I would call a month of the busy event season, i.e. sort of June, end of May, June is where it picks up. But we have in this Q2 statement prepared a forecast at the request of some of the board members for what the year end might look like. And typically at the mid-year point, and I just remind board members, it isn't always terribly optimistic. And this forecast, if we drill down to the bottom, is forecasting a deficit. And we've been in this situation before in the range of 120 to 200,000. So I am aware, look at these figures very carefully. Historically, we're very good at controlling our expense side, and we usually recover some of that. The caution I have, and I wanted to flag this to the board, and we'll report more when I have the Q3 figures, is both I've spoken with Astral Bell Media, and they know their bookings for the digital screens in the fall are down. So there's not as many advanced bookings for advertising in the September to December run. And their vice president indicates that this is largely as a result, in their opinion, of certain south of the border initiatives, should we say, of the said president. And a lot of the marketing companies are being very cautious, particularly if they're promoting an American brand. They're not all brands that are owned by Americans. There's less digital screen advertising. We will still get what's called the minimum annual guarantee, but we have factored into this budget, as on the basis of previous history, a sort of $200,000 to $300,000 bonus, as it were, of additional sales. Michelle and Brad and the team at Astral are trying to push that and get some additional advertising cover, but it's not as optimistic or favourable as we might like at this point in time. It's a slightly similar but smaller story with city sightseeing and the bus tours. They're not seeing as much American visitor traffic, of course, to this country. Some local home market tourism is backfilling, but the bus ticket sales, and for not only for the sightseeing that happens in and around Toronto, but they sell from the square visitors to Niagara. They sell a whole bunch of tickets across the tourism sector in southern Ontario, and their sales are down as well. And I'm meeting with their co-owner on Monday to review that, and also to initiate with Craig, which I think is a timely matter, the start of we need to formalise into a 3-year contract with City Sightseeing, really what business plan is going to be and what their contribution is to the future of the square. It is time for a fairly major review of that particular arrangement. I acknowledge that, and we're going to deal with that.
We'll move to questions in a minute. I just had two comments. The first is, I think that the struggles you've underlined in terms of our dependence on third parties to do good jobs selling things and therefore making us solvent is part of the issue that we need to solve for in the strategic plan. That between a kind of short-term single year funding agreement with the City of Toronto, plus our dependence on informal agreements with third parties that we don't control, being the lion's share of our revenue, there's some real risk attached there. And I think that what we need to be thinking about is long-term conversations with all of those folks, including the city, which is part of the recommendations of the first draft of the strategic plan, is looking at a longer-term funding agreement with the city, but also building out more diverse revenues and looking at models that include not just event sponsorship, but square sponsorship specifically. We've had some meaningful conversations with ECDEV in the last 48 hours about helping us on that front as well. So that's the first comment. The second comment is maybe I could turn to my fellow board members, and we don't have to do it here. It would be helpful, I think, for us to have a slightly clearer narrative around the financials. And I'd be happy to share the format we use at the nonprofit I work at, but there might be some others that other people work at. But just the interpretation of the notes can be hard. You know, get those 3 to 4 key points into a narrative that front ends the financial statements. And those notes, usually what I would focus on are major variances and especially at the end of Q2, risk, highlighting risk so that we understand which lines are where. You've done a little bit of that, you've redlined some stuff and you've got notes. So it's not that there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I just think a format that allows us to kind of build a conversation around your real concerns
Yes.
is going to be more helpful. So formats and their financial statements, I recommend sharing with management.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments for Julian and the team on the financial statements? Yes.
I have a couple. So with regards to Q3, I'm just curious because we just ended a few weeks ago. What is the standing now, and when would we get those reports? Because we're a little bit late. The financial update at this point.
Yes, and typically we would do Q3 statements in December at the December board meeting, but I'm very aware that that is a bit late. And I think I would like to suggest that whilst we might not have a formal board meeting, that I do circulate a sort of interim Q3 set of figures as soon as is reasonably practical, possibly by the end of this month or very early in November, so that a number of us can review that and see what position that we're in, and share that with the executive. We have, and for Carrie and other new board members, we have a sort of budget working group, I would say, in the form of Samantha, Simon and myself. And I'm happy to extend that little working group and convene on the Q3 figures.
Yeah, because for us to be able to understand sort of where we are sort of deficit wise in our revenue position, you know, what kinds of work we need to do, what kind of time we have. You know, it is a very urgent thing as you get towards the end of the year if you want to make goals. The other thing,
Carrie, can I just add a question thought to that just before you move on, is to say we are now working with a new accountant and accounting system. So the question would be for them some clarity on how quickly we can close on a quarterly basis. And even if it's provisional numbers, maybe to talk to them about accelerating the pace on that a little bit. I'm not saying, I mean, a month would be normal to me, but maybe 6 weeks less normal.
I guess in my role, I mean, goal setting is all surrounding our, you know, financial You have
Yes.
this much money, you have that much to gain, and you know, how much time do you have to get there? The other item I was thinking about is, you know, we're dependent on third parties to bring in revenue, but one of the things that has been really successful for us is film groups, and I work with two groups that bring in over $100,000 a year in film revenue. And one is called the Ancillary Group, and the other one is called Backlot, and they are a third party sort of intermediary between the film industry. Basically, they corral location managers. They and I'm making $25,000 in 3 days, and it's on one day of filming. That's prep day and wrap day. So if we're short, there are different avenues that we can pursue. I mean, it's a very specific kind of area, but you have a parking lot too. They love to run through parking lots. So as an idea, I can forward those contacts to you. And then you're talking about Astral. I don't know if Astral has a contract that, you know, ties up the entire site for the entire year, but there's also other groups of huts and et cetera. Who else can we bring in to supplementary? So that's sort of thoughts off the top of my head. And I had another one, but anyway, it's exited since I had my 4, that's all I had.
You can bring it back up anytime. It doesn't have to be on agenda.
No, that's a timely reminder, Carrie, about the film community. We'll try and do another reach. We during the pandemic, we were variously in Tagons, Handmaid's Tale, Star Trek, you know,
I know
great
the
videos.
boys.
And various other. So, yeah, that's a good reminder. And just to remind ourselves, the current operation of the billboard contract with Astral Bell Media, as it's now known, runs to July 2027 for the on-site screens.
Okay, so they're tied up until that.
We're tied into that contract at that time, but that said, we are in discussions with one of the other companies, Branded Cities,
All right, yeah.
and not that they necessarily will take over the screens, but they are often very interested in partnering a brand that is appearing on their screens with some kind of physical activation on the screen.
They are on the corner of my site. They are the tower, Branded
Yes.
Cities, that, you know, you have multiple different screens there, so that makes perfect sense.
One of the things, just as a bit of history for everybody as well, is, you know, the screens that we have on site are fairly insignificant compared to the larger screen environment. And that the councillor's office has been incredibly helpful trying to find ways to make sure that the square benefits. If the square is already has lots of people going through it and is going to be a place with more latent activity in it, that it should benefit from the eyeballs that it offers to the screens around us. So, I mean, I think in general, the big challenge for a kind of civic asset like this is that there's not really any other traditional revenue generating tools, right? You don't charge admission. You know, that the old model, which we are trying to move away from, was a high dependence on event fees. And therefore the event fees had to be premiumized because that was the only source of revenue that we could depend on. If we're going to be filling it daytime, if we're going to have pop-up stuff, community activity, we're going to have to find other reliable revenue streams that include all of the things that you're talking about.
Great.
And if you allow me a little bit of a postscript, I know we're discussing Q2 financials, but one of the things I want to bring to the board's attention as part of this, actually, and it's very timely we're talking about billboards, is that Taylor and other colleagues at the city, our staff team, have really worked very hard at getting other screen partnerships during the course of the year. Art partnerships for sure, but I just want to bring to everyone's attention, last year, and booked so far this year, the City of Toronto itself we've allowed them 73 promotions on the screens on the square, and we just calculated it last week. That has a commercial screen value of 1.493 million, so nearly 1.5 million in screen promotion has been given over to the City of Toronto in the course of this year. It's not an insignificant figure.
I think that's a really interesting figure for us to keep in mind. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
it's too bad you can't put that on the Manchester.
Well, there may be a way, you know, yeah, I mean, there may be a way for us to account for that. Any other comments before I call for a motion to approve the financial statements for Q2? Thank you, Carrie, for that, really helpful ideas and questions. Anything else?
Just a quick comment. So Julian, I know Samantha, you and I have been chatting separately around just the 2026 budget submission to the city. I think I don't know if everyone is aware of the board, but knowing going into 2026 that we've been asked to make a 200,000 haircut from the city in terms of that funding piece, I do think it's important that we do further look at those alternative revenue streams and being creative about how we are going to generate the revenue line if the expenses continue to climb. So I do agree that we need clear timelines on when we can see that budget. To Carrie's point, just having a really good hold of what our actuals are and a most educated forecast of where we're going to land the year. It looks like we're not going to have any surplus. So, you know, it adds further to the two conversations are very much connected. So I think that's just something that we need to make sure that we're accounting for accordingly. And then again, raising where we need councillor support on some of these like larger revenue models that need a bit more consultation and movement from other parties, whether it's the billboard tax and or TPA, et cetera.
Yeah, and I thanks, Simon. That's good thoughts. To add to those, I think that the what is becoming clear and what the opportunity of the new strategic plan is going to offer us is an ability to go out now and rally the support of other city partners and agencies. We've had some meaningful conversations with ECDEV. We've had some meaningful conversations with other areas, both in the cost reduction and in the revenue generating side of things. I think we should be building the model on the aspirations of the strategic plan and not as a backstop. And just for any board members who are newer to the table, we don't ever retain any surplus that we have, that any surplus is returned to the city. It's not a surplus because the city is making a payment in, so it's sort of a surplus is maybe a difficult, it's not the right concept to apply to this. It is something though that we should also consider over time, is whether or not an operating surplus for the square could be retained by the square in order to do things like capital improvement or investment in revenue generating activities, et cetera, because essentially we're carte blanche every turn of the fiscal year, and so we have to start the model anew every single time. And from an agency perspective, that's disincentivizing in terms of changes in revenue generation. Great. Any other comments on the Q2s? Great, can I get a motion to approve them? Carrie, thank you. Seconder?
Much as phase you might want to vote for them.
Yeah. Simon, could I get you to second?
Sure.
Right, Simon second, all in favor? Great.
Thank you.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. Great, let's dig into the staff reports, the format of which is getting better and better, guys. Thank you very, very much. If we could sort of focus on highlights, we'll try to move through the agenda in a timely fashion. So why don't we start with Marnie?
Yes. So the marketing report, because of the cancellations of the previous meetings, this has a focus of about 4 to 5 months of activity, but during that period of time, largely focused on branding, getting the branding out there with Sankofa Day, kind of wrapping up the core activities around the rebranding work. So the last piece there is just kind of fine tuning and finishing up the brand guidelines. And from that point, it's now about ongoing implementation and how do we incorporate the brand story, tying it with the strategic plan that's forthcoming, and that work. The other shift for me being working on the rebranding and all the pieces around Sankofa Day now that that's kind of passed, it's kind of go back to other work that has been kind of put on the shelf since for that process. So going back into more focused planning for 2026 and going forward, as well as in conjunction with the rebrand, refining some of our systems and processes, and those are sort of the pieces that we're looking at going forward. Sankofa Day promotion, I would like to say, you know, since everybody's focused on baseball right now for Blue Jays fans. I think we hit it out of the other part there with a local promotion and awareness, and also a shift in the majority of the narrative that was kind of surrounding the initial name change, which was from a loud, I would consider loud minority of individuals, but that shift is apparent. But over 100 million in media impressions, 4 million impressions with social, so I think that was a really good milestone and sort of a goal point and bookmark in that activity. The purple freestanding sign, definite success on the square. Now that it's been created, it's looking over at Taylor, because now she's putting sort of the operational plan and how to maintain what's on the square. Great feedback. Great, it's done what it's intended to do. It's been picked up in media and public photos, and added to the environment of the square. And those are some of the main pieces for me, but yeah, right now it's focused on going forward on 2026 planning and trying to recover with the capacity of team, which is
Yes. Team singular.
yes,
Yes.
there's no I in team. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Marnie? Great. Taylor?
I don't have many highlights from this report. I mean, the late summer for me is really keeping up with the event season in the facility, unfortunately. So it's a lot of responding to kind of the age of the site and what the events need from us. And things are running smoothly, operationally. I will say that the paper replacement project that was going on is completed. So that is done, and it was a long road to get there. Other than that, I did note a critical incident that happened in July. Perhaps we'll dive a bit more.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a couple follow-up questions in the in-camera, but we'll come to those. Any questions for Taylor? Thanks. Emily?
Yeah, it was a busy summer for us. Obviously, we lost a team member, so we were down. And we only have 3 event coordinators now working. And then we also added 3 new initiatives with Melon and Market, our Carnival partnership, and Sankofa Day. So we were moving and grooving. In terms of targets, we are around 10,000 over our overall net revenue from event permit and event support fees. You'll notice that like permit fees aren't reaching target, but our support fees are going above target. So that's sort of what's making up for it. And Julian and I are looking into how we track that moving forward for our 2026 budget as well. Sankofa Day, while it was a lot on the team, it was a huge success for what it needed to be. And we're really excited to build off on that, get a new curator involved, work a bit more with some of the cultural organizations in the city. I think it's key to realize that we started talking about Sankofa Day in May, and it happened at the end of August. So it's quite incredible what we're able to do in such a little time, and now we want to be able to get the sponsors to fund that as well. A bit of a feedback on Carnival third-party event supplier pilot wasn't the best client to work on with that specifically. I think there are clients that we are going to cherry pick moving forward, but we will still work with Carnival. And then the only other thing I wanted to highlight is we are starting to work with Eat It Up Media, who is an agency who works both with Harborfront and with the Distillery District to get commercial activations in the space. And that's been a real difficulty for us, especially this year. We don't have a lot of commercial activations this year, I mean, understandably, but having a source that is just constantly pitching and selling us, I think will be a huge benefit and hopefully increase our revenue from that side of things. And what they're working on right now for us is winter build. So in the success of Sankofa Day, we went a bit over budget on programming. So we don't have that budget for winter build at the moment. So we're working with Unit Media to figure out if we can bring in enough sponsors and brand activations to make winter build happen. So that's the big thing that we're focusing on now. And then obviously looking at what's come out of the new strategic plan, how we can, you know, program consistently smaller for 2026 with the budget that we have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Or sort of a thought. I think what would be helpful, sort of, you know, there's the kind of grand strokes of the strategic plan, which will be sort of big macro things. I think that, as you move into Q3, 4, or 4, having a good close look at a kind of SWOT on the community-based events that we hosted, right? If part of the future model is kind of low barrier access to the square for events.
Yeah.
Giving us some perspective on the challenges, and it would be something that we would share in camera due to sort of not wanting to talk specifically about any given partner.
Yeah.
But an understanding in aggregate of the challenges and opportunities that we have in those. I maintain, and I'll repeat for what it's worth to you know, to the board, that we have to start shifting out of an events mindset, that the notion that the square works on one-off events is what we're trying to move away from, but understanding how we can, first of all, make the site available to community partners on a recurring, low barrier, low lift basis is a brand new thing, and some learnings from what you experienced over the summer are important there. And on the flip side is we are gonna want community groups to do large scale events there.
Yeah.
Large scale events are the tip of the pyramid. So how do we make that happen in a smart way? What are some of the preconceptions that we had about what the square needed to cover or not needed to cover? What additional capacity does the city have to help us? You know, for example, if we have a model where community partners are going to do large scale events, could that be supported by corporate security of the city of Toronto instead of our third party contract with our security company? Let's really dig into those dynamics. I think it's really important that by year end, we have an understanding of the impact of it, because you guys did do a big reach, Melanin Market, Sankofa, which was us driving the program, but it was a large scale event.
Yeah.
You know, Carnival, these were all done under a brand new framework, and we need to understand what's working in that and also what's not. Great. And that, it doesn't have to be a big old, you don't have to do a strategic plan, just a point form SWOT. Right, great. Any other questions for Emily? Great. Great, so those are the management reports. We're gonna be moving into the closed section of the meeting now. So I'd like a motion that the board close the regular portion of the meeting. Yeah, Emily, thank you. And Greg, Carrie second. And that the board meet in closed session to discuss matters that deal with the security of the board's property and other confidential matters. Same proposer and seconder, thank you. And off we go.
So a little pause whilst we all meet into a separate meeting room.
into the one.
Their business, Simon offered it, but yes, one other business.
I've got just a friendly reminder, and I'll email everyone. I know I circulated a board contact sheet to board members only. It is confidential. I've had some feedback, thank you, Carrie, and Samantha, on a couple of corrections relevant to them. If anyone has any board contacts, corrections to make, please let me know. And I also circulated the proposed 2026 dates for board meetings here. They align to avoid BIA meetings. And Stanley in the council's office is doing a check to make sure that they meet with the council's availability as much as possible. So, but if there's any other big clash you can see, please let me know and we'll try and tweak them. Sorry, thank you for that.
That's perfect. That is exactly what other business is meant to be. Simon has offered his proxy vote for a vote to adjourn the meeting. I will propose it. Could I get a seconder?
Carrie, seconding. Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah,